started out half my life living outside of Atlanta, Georgia. And then in middle school, my dad in the FBI got transferred, and we moved to just outside of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And I lost my southern accent immediately um, on purpose. And it was 11th grade. I was sitting in AP English, and I always sat kind of slightly off to the left, at least halfway to the back, to be less under direct fire of the teacher. I really liked the teacher. She was brilliant, had gorgeous red hair, sense of style. And one day she said, "Katie Koestner, you are a mealy-mouthed little meep," in front of my entire English class. And I was mortified. I didn't even know what a meep was at that point. But clearly it probably meant I didn't speak up for myself. And prior to high school, I went to a middle school, kind of a feeder school. The high school was almost 3,000, so we had two middle schools that fed together. And another unique experience, it was right before the holidays, and my mom had a tendency to be very festive, and she adorned me with a giant red ribbon with a jingle bell on it. And she hand painted maybe a Christmas tree on one side and a snow person on the other. And she sent me off to school to be festive on her behalf. And my middle school was such that you could walk up the front steps, and there was a bank of glass doors. And I imagine many of you have seen those kind of doors where you can not really see what's inside, but everyone inside can see you. So I remember the day distinctly in middle school, and I also knew the exact layout of the land just inside those doors where all the kids would mill around and hang out before the bell rang and we had to go to homeroom. And I also happened to actually know exactly where the cutest boy in the entire school stood every day in the morning. And I also knew his friends were there. And I walked in, and I had my ginormous jingle bell on. And I did not know at that moment that the cutest boy in the school had an incredible talent. Because I walked in, and all of a sudden, off to the side, I hear a large mooing noise, as if I am now a cow. And what became worse was his friends also developed mooing skills on the spot, following the leader, and the cacophony of cows was now bellowing my direction. Mortified, I went to the nearest respite that I could think of on the spot, which of course was the only place free from boys, which was the girls' bathroom. And I was faced with a quandary, because I knew I had the bell for the rest of the day, and either I had to destroy the bell, or wear the bell, or flush the bell down the toilet. So I decided to be environmentally irresponsible that day, and I took the entire wad of toilet paper and muffled the bell and stuck it into my backpack. And I timed it really well so that I would not leave the bathroom until the last possible second, when I could dash to homeroom and still not be late for class. So I was hoping by the end of homeroom, the mooers would have forgotten their mooing technique. But I also happened to know the exact route of the cutest boy in the school's entire class day schedule. And our building was shaped like a figure 8, so I could even reroute myself all day long as needed to avoid the mooing, which I did. And I made it all the way to lunch, and then concern took over again that I could walk into lunch where we would all be and I'd get mooed at again. So I decided to skip lunch, but the stomach was growling, and eventually I succumbed to hunger and went into the cafeteria. And of course, I also know where the cutest boy and all his friends are sitting in the cafeteria. And not only had they not forgotten their mooing techniques, but they had developed an entire barnyard of mooing various popular music at me by then. So I quickly left lunch and hoped that with the break looming large that the mooing would cease. Certainly he wasn't that smart to remember what he had done 2 weeks ago, and there would be no more mooing the rest of middle school, but I was wrong. I tell you both of those stories because I did not speak up for myself. So if we roll it back to graduation from high school, I also share with you that there was a math class. There were only 4 of us, myself and 3 boys. Our senior year, we were done with calc. We were on to stats. And my math teacher said, Katie Koestner, you're much more of a people person, because I had said I wanted to be an engineer. And so I listened. I didn't follow his advice, but I listened, and I didn't protest, and I didn't say, why me, when I'm getting the same exact perfect scores on all the tests that the 3 boys are. And you just told them how MIT would be a great choice and Virginia Tech, but I'm a people person. So I kept my mouth shut. So now I'm going off to college, and I chose halfway back towards the south, William and Mary, bucolic. People dress up. They still think it's the 1600s, and it's a wonderful time of the history. So I'm out of state, and it's more affordable to go there. And I arrive, and I volunteered to live in the all-female first-year residence hall by choice. Like, I wasn't cajoled, enticed by my mother. I simply said I didn't want to do hair and wardrobe before 8 a.m. and see men, because that was maintenance and effort. And I remember thinking by day 2, there were men popping up out of bathrooms, stored in closets, or like pop-up men everywhere. It was default co-ed anyway. And at the end of my floor was an incredibly tall, beautiful brunette. And second afternoon, we're there, and we're all standing around getting to know one another. And she walks out, and she says with nonchalance, I think we should figure out which building on campus has the greatest number of hot men, and then get them all over here and have a party. And I remember I actually raised my hand to volunteer for the committee to ascertain, perhaps with some sort of calculation, which building would be the appropriate choice. And then there was a quandary: how do you get a bunch of men to migrate to the same location legally appropriately at one time? And we decided Monty Python, The Quest for the Holy Grail, and food. Great combination. And all the men show up, and I staked out the back of the room where the movie was being shown with the maximum peripheral vision for appropriately watching the film for 3 minutes. And then I did what none of us ever do, is the scan. None of you are locusts, not once, not ever. And I did do it, and I kind of used the full head movement. And the guy was about 230, 8 feet away on the floor, with cool shoes, great hair flipped to the side, buttons on his shirt, wardrobe, commitment right there with the buttons, and college. And I was duly impressed. I didn't have photo recognition software on my phone, so I couldn't just photo recognition swipe him in and find out if he plays the tuba, what his entire genealogy was, and all the things that we have now. But I used imagination. But then I remember my brain kicked in, and I was thinking, you cannot look in the same direction so long of a time, you will be inappropriate. And I did watch the film. And then there was the new idea that you can actually do the kind of eye switch with no head movement. The clandestine glance, and I did look, and luckily this time he was looking at me, and he was smiling, which was excellent. And then this very bad thing happened, and my hand flew up, and I was waving. And then I was betrayed by my hand, so I swooped the hand down, sit on the hand, bad hand, and then I roll it forward, and I realize in no short order the movie will be over, the lights will be on, and I'll have to have an oxygenated conversation in real time with this human. And I'm not ready. Remember Mealy-Mouthed Meep, so I'm just not ready for this level of conversation. So I leave the film. So where does one go? Your first weekend at college on a Saturday evening, to the library. I did. I'd seen the library was open till 12 midnight on Saturdays, presumably humans possibly in there studying. And so I go to the library. But on the way to the library, epiphany strikes, because I realize there's only 2 cafeterias at the entire college. That means I have a 50-50 chance at lunch to see the guy. Coin toss exercise, statistics, remember math. And one has slightly better food, so I was thinking I'll go to the one with the better food and take the extended lunch, and perhaps I'll see him. 3 days into my plan, I'm eating at one end and he's eating at the other end, but he's with the pack, like his whole friend group. I'm not pack ready. That's way too much material. But then again, idea strikes. Eventually, in theory, he has to get up and throw his trash away if he's environmentally responsible. And I have standards. So luckily, I saw him get up, and so I got up, and I met him at the trash can, which is not stalking. It's coincidental chance meeting with design, which is a totally different thing. So I opened comment on the food. So you can only do food comment so long, and then I segued to classes, and I figure we both probably have bio or chem. All of us have one-on-one of one of those, and luckily he had chem, I had chem. I had the 5 on the AP, didn't need to study, but I said, why don't we study? Which, again, maybe I'm arguably intelligent. He did agree. We go back to my dorm next day. There's a study lounge, first floor, diligently studying atoms, molecules, for 3 minutes, and then where are you from, what do you like to do? We got along great. We see each other every day, all week long. The end of the week, Friday, he says, I think we should go out on a date, like to a restaurant with cloth napkins and reservations. So immediately when he says that, I'm like, cloth napkins, do you match the napkin? What's napkin protocol? Like, do you, I don't know. Where I grew up in Pennsylvania, we had not a lot of international cuisine. I had the trip to Epcot for the band, so I had international dining then, but not so much all the time growing up. I don't know how you all were raised, but we had not many nights out, fancy dinner. So he comes over Friday, knocks on my, or now it's Saturday, knocks on the door. I open the door. And I just, I know we're in this day and age, but no matter the time or date, just to imagine the date standing there is wearing the 3-piece Italian blue pinstripe suit with the hand stitching, and I have my 10th grade homecoming dance dress on, adorable. And we walked across the street to the very fancy French restaurant he had selected, and everything's in French. I mean, the waiter's in French, the menu's in French. So I do Japanese, I do German, no French. And I looked at the menu, and even then, all the columns, 2 digits for all the numeric values of, and then, do I pay? Does he pay? We never talked about the payment. And then the waiter comes over, and my date orders in fluent French. I'm like thinking all of his French classes paid off in one fell swoop. Amazing, right? Perfect. And I didn't know what he ordered, but the waiter comes back, and the waiter, you have to imagine, looks like he could bench press with a pinky, levitates this massive tray down, puts 1 glass of champagne on the table in front of each of us. I did precisely what all of you in the US of A at 18 would have done. I leaned across the table and I said, we're not 21 yet. Like, I know all of you would do this. And I know. And he said, I know. And I said, but I don't drink. I drink Coca-Cola, but I don't drink the alcohol. And it's not totally the 21 law. It's like my dad's an FBI agent, and he'll know. I don't know when he's going to know, but eventually there'll be some people here shortly, and they'll know. I don't know how you grew up, and I was trying to explain, a little bit about how I was raised. And I had the kind of dad, I had a younger sister, no brothers. Dad would be the kind of dad, if the guy came over on the date to get me, my dad would be fingerprinting the front doorknob to get the guy's prints on file just for precautionary measures, and wearing the fatigues with the large weapons strapped conspicuously on the outside, often ushering the guy into the family room where the entire gun collection, well displayed, cleaning one, heads of animals on the walls, and then pointing to the backyard where the target practice would be later held, just to see how he does. Anyway, I can tell you I was nervous. And my date said, but it's not every night I order champagne for someone. And I had 2 sips. Now that's just a slice of my life. I have moments left. I broke my silence. That night, I went back to my room. I told him no over a dozen times. We had a trial. No one had ever spoken out about being raped by someone you knew who paid for dinner. I invited him back to my room. My dad said I shouldn't have had him in my room. My mom said, you're never going to get a good husband if you're damaged goods. My dean said, when I reported it, you might ruin his life. You should go home and think about this. My hearing officer said, I found him guilty, but you make a nice couple. You should get back together again. About 2,000 out of 5,000 students signed a petition that said I lied when I was making a movie with HBO. They covered my car with honey and baby powder. They voted me the most dangerous man on campus. It said, Katie's the slut bitch whore on the walls. I tell you none of that for your pity. I tell you all of that for your strength, because I want you to break silence too. I don't know your cause. I don't know your passion, but I went from Meep to speak. I broke the silence, and when I started speaking, the first thing I had to do was sign my name and release it to the public. No one in history had ever had their name printed as the victim of date rape, any kind of rape, because rape was a property crime. And I said, I'm not the one who should be embarrassed, he should be embarrassed. I'm not damaged goods. If a guy doesn't want me, I'm not gonna want him. I spoke in front of 250,000 people when I was maybe 20 on the mall in Washington, D.C. I was nervous. I'll tell you, every time I'm nervous. I don't care if I'm at the UN or the Pentagon or 5,000 cadets or an audience, but you have to keep trying. I wrote an article anonymously about my college educating a rapist because he was found guilty and not punished. He was told not to go to my dorm for one semester. I want to challenge you with this. I have spent my life traveling and telling the story of the worst night in my life, and my story is not even close to the worst of the 10 per day I hear. And my cause is only one of many causes. And what I came here to say is I want all of you to speak too. It is not easy. I was speaking at the Naval Academy, and midshipman came up. He said he had a crush on the prom queen and she wouldn't date him. At the after prom party, the prom queen was passed out. She had so much. He walked past the kitchen, 4 guys standing, including the one worthy to be your date. He took a chair, he sat next to the bed, waited there. The 4 guys walked in and one said, leave. He said, no, I'm not leaving. Silence. 2 guys walk out. The other 2 said, if you don't leave, we're going to give you what she's going to get. Another long silence. He said, I'm not leaving. Eventually the 2 left, but the best part of his story, he said he never told the prom queen what he did for her. He didn't need the ego. He didn't need the applause. He just did the right thing. I leave you with this. I want none of you to wait until you have nothing to lose. My dad has never heard me speak in my whole life. When I stood at the top of the brick steps after meeting with my rapist right before I reported him, before I even knew that there would even be possibly a name for what happened to me, I made a decision whether I would walk 20 minutes to my left to my dorm to keep a secret for the rest of my life. So would I have tuition money, so I wouldn't ruffle feathers, so I wouldn't make my parents upset, I would not mess up the friends and the relationships I had at school. There was a lot at stake. But I walked 2 buildings to the right, to the police station. And the officer said, what were you wearing? I'm going to need to see that dress. Did you lead him on? Did you fool around? Have you done this before? Were you really a virgin? And a million other questions. And I have spent my entire life answering those questions. And I am not alone in this fight. But we have got to do better on this cause, and you name the cause. And if you're one who doesn't speak, what keeps you silent? What is the fear? What do you think you could lose? And when you finally feel you're at break, what is break? It doesn't have to be a petition 2,000 people long. It doesn't have to be slanderous words on a wall. Break has to mean you're not going to stand for it anymore. And you're all in. And don't think it's going to be easy. It's not. People are going to push you back. And you're going to think, why am I doing this alone? But eventually I'm going to say, keep going. Keep going. Because silence changes nothing. Thank you.